Hello, Steve here again with a quote reportedly having been said by Eleanor Roosevelt, of all people. I don't know if that's true or not, but basically it's an interesting quote. It says that great minds discuss ideas, average minds discuss events, small minds discuss people. Yeah, I suppose somebody can make the case for that. And, even the great minds of the world will discuss people once in a while, for example. And I'm not going to put myself in the category of great mind or whatever, but I just definitely do like discussing ideas, or at least sharing ideas that are I think are important. But one thing though is more and more I'm prepared to, you know, and it's interesting how a lot of ideas now are put down. And if you look at who's putting forth those ideas, very often they are a certain segment of the society. And I'm going to make the case for young Christian men. And the reason I'm going to mention this anyways, and the reason I'm going to mention this is because I've been involved with Toastmasters for many years. And the origin of that organization has come out of the YMCA, which is the Young Men's Christian Association, right? That's how it started. The membership in Toastmasters for many years was young Christian men. That's what it was. Today, 2018, there are few young Christian men in Toastmasters. And this California-based organization, I would guess, is not going to mention that. Is not going to bring that up as a possible reason why they have a hard time retaining membership now, and why they're implementing a brand new system which completely changes so many things that the old system is completely not compatible with it. So I'm not going to get into that, but I'm just saying that if you change up the demographic of anything, then to expect it to perform the same is intellectual laziness, or it's just dishonest. It's got to be one of the two, I think. So I guess when I look at Toastmasters today and I see that there are a few young Christian men, like it's not even a significant minority, I don't think, anymore there. It begs the question, where are they? Where have these men gone? Where have these, and I'm going to say these people, if you look at the contribution of young Christian men to the Western world, it is amazing. Walk around the cities and ask, first of all, categorize, first of all, men, okay? Look at everything. Look at the cars, look at the technology, look at the buildings, look at the streets, look at the infrastructure, look at the sort of the institutions and all of that. Who created that, right? A significantly high percentage, probably north of 90%, it's men, right? And because the West was generally populated and developed by it's Christian men. And for the work ethic and the energy to sustain things and develop things, it's young Christian men. That's who created what we know as the West, largely. The abolition of slavery, the development of the steam engine, and the development of medicine, and the development of science, and the institutions that we have. These Western institutions that we cherish, these are largely developed by young Christian men. And so the question is, where have they gone? And especially in a day of social justice and all this equity demand from all of the different groups. And of course, if you look at who is the one individual, archetypal individual, who is denigrated these days? It is the young Christian, largely white man. Anybody else is a sacred cow, basically. Women, you can't say much about them. Minorities, you can't say much about them. Muslims and Jews and all these, they're protected classes. But it's fair, open market and game on the young Christian men. And it's interesting how when studies are done as to who pays the most, who pays the net taxes into Western countries, it's that demographic. It's the young, energetic, largely Christian white male. Everybody else is a net receiver. And this is not something that's, it's going to be controversial to some, but I mean, if we're going to call ourselves great minds or aspire to great minds, surely we got to be open to discussing these things. And even if you look at the production, even today, of the latest technologies, who's developing these? Who's developing the electric car? Who's doing SpaceX? Who's developing the iPhones? The masterminds of it? Microsoft, and the cryptocurrencies, perhaps, that might have been Japanese, but who knows? But first of all, it's men, right? Throughout, and we know this from the bell curve, that men are practically much more intelligent than women, and then of course the intelligence of race and IQ as well. Young men or maybe not really young men, but men tend to mature they mature later than women. Their mind matures later than women, and what takes longer to mature is usually more complex. So the mind of genius man is off the charts of almost anybody. I mean, when you get up around the 140, 150 IQ and so on, there's almost no representation of women in there. But there's some representation of men, and it takes a lot of genius to be these Einsteins and these, Sir Isaac Newtons and the Steve Jobs of the world and so on. It takes a lot of IQ, and it's the purview of typically young men. It's the domain of young men, and also young men of that type. You take a Steve Jobs, for example. They're not very patient. They're not known as friendly people very often. These are they have a very low tolerance for the interaction, the kind and gentle interaction with people. Steve Jobs is known as a bit of a tyrant, actually, and so they would have a low patience for low productivity in organizations like a Modern Toastmasters, and that's why I think I've seen it over and over again. You'll have an energetic guy, young guy, show up, and he's there for a couple of meetings and he's gone. Like this is not, it's not what he wants. It's too diluted. Whereas if it was all a bunch of guys like him who are energetic, competitive, like a bit of a mental and emotional sports team, he'd probably stay around and just rocket through that program like nothing, right? So so where have they gone? Where have they gone? Well, what I've noticed is that, for example, there's a sort of a resurgence in the Amway company. Amway had a real bad name for the longest time, and it's had a resurgence, and it's having a resurgence in the young, because that's a place where young guys can sign up, and it's uber competitive, extremely difficult, and you rise and fall on what you're doing. Like it's amazing how anybody can succeed at that, and the ones who succeed at it, it is a team effort very often. What works best is a man, like a husband and wife, or a team effort working together. But the front man or the front person is the man who goes out there and sells that, and it's typically a young man who will just hump that as hard as he can and make something of it. You got to defer a lot of gratification, big time, to do that, I think. At ANCAP conventions, I've noticed, anarcho-capitalist and freedom conventions in general, tends to be a sausage fest. And the girls, no, don't get me wrong, this is not a black and white thing. I mean, some of the greatest writers of all times of liberty and freedom and rational thought, I think of Ayn Rand, and Ann Coulter, and Laura Ingalls Wilder's Rose Wilder Lane as an example. In fact, the founders of the libertarian movement, Some people say were women. Well, Rose Wilder Lane, Ayn Rand, and somebody else. So it's not a black and white. There's some extremely intelligent women who are very, very productive. Don't get me wrong. But what I'm saying is a general rule. As a general rule, this has been the case historically, and for good reason. I mean, because we've evolved for different roles, right? We've evolved for different roles. Women evolved largely working with children. Men evolved largely working with adults. So, the male mind is more of an adult mind. And the female mind, generally speaking, is more infantile. The way it approaches. That's why women are more emotional, as children are, and men are more rational, as adults are, or as men are, right? So it's the natural ecosystem in which we have evolved. And those are the differences, I think, in some cases. Now, another place that young men would hang out now is at cryptocurrency and gamer type events where there's lots of technology, where there's more ideas rather than people, right? I mean, if you're successful in crypto, man, you are friggin' off the charts intelligent, and you have to be, because it's a very cerebral, very rational type of thing, very mathematics based in a way, I guess. I've got a good friend actually who's involved in that, and he was talking about, he'd like to find a lady or whatever at some point to be as a partner. And I was mentioning something about, what about these crypto events that he goes to? He says, have you ever been to one? It's a bloody sausage fest. It's guys there, right? And there's girls who will come out too. There's a few that are interested in it, yes. But a few will come out if they're wise and they want to meet a young, energetic guy. That would be a good place to hang out, I would say. I think that one of the reasons why guys would gravitate away from their former bastions, like what was Toastmasters, and into these crypto events and these ANCAP events and into network marketing, business in general for that matter, is because in those circles, their ideas, because they like to talk about ideas, are not only accepted, but they're actionable. And they can take those ideas on to produce in a competitive field, which is what really drives the masculine sense, right? And and so, which was typically the purview in the West, anyways, of young Christian men. So I guess the question is, what can we learn from this, right? What can we learn from this? Well, I would say that what we can learn from this is to look at our human ecosystem, who it is that we're hanging out with. And if we're getting value from that, then that's great. But if we're not, we got to do something about it. Just as the young Christian men have done, they've moved on, right? Those who are successful have moved on. Many have succumbed to the pressures, right? The pressures of this, what's been going on, and the denigration of men. And a lot of them have been drugged by a young age. They've been drugged with these psychotropic drugs, and they've been bullied into an infantile state of basement dwelling. And there's lots of those as well. But those who are able to see that their ecosystem is not serving them as young adults, they move on. They move on to find another ecosystem, be that in network marketing, business, or the cryptos, or whatever it is. They moved on. Or they go and find those. So that's what we can learn, is if our human ecosystem is not working for us, we have to go look for another ecosystem, or we have to build our own ecosystem. We really have to. And I think what I see in Toastmasters is the result of that happening, because I see people who will come and they'll leave, and I see just this dilution, constant dilution, where there's very few highly productive young men involved anymore. Steve here, getting great chatting. If you like what I'm doing, please like, share, subscribe, and comment. Talk again soon. Bye for now.